When I did well, my mother would always light a diya, a kind of candle, and offer sweets to God, but that's as far as it went. Sometimes people are kind enough to compliment me on my off-the-field behavior more than my on-field performance. They say that I seem to have managed to keep my feet grounded. If that's true, then I have no hesitation in saying that all the credit goes to my family. Hajj's presence in Pakistan was a great help, and we talked every evening about my game and how I could improve. While there were many senior teammates who I could go to, I was most comfortable discussing things with Ajit, as he knew my game better than anyone. He had watched me grow up as a cricketer, and it was natural that his observations would always be pertinent. After coming back from Pakistan, I felt much more positive about myself as a cricketer and was looking forward to India's next away tour to New Zealand at the start of 1990. I was pretty confident of getting picked, but was still delighted to see myself in the squad when the touring side was announced. India in Pakistan 1989 First Test. Karachi, 15 to 20 November 1989. Pakistan 409 earned on 109 *, Jamie and Dad 78, S. Mohama 67, Camp Pradharkars 5 to 104, Kapildeb 4, 69 and 305 to 5 December. S. Malik 102 S. Mohama 95, Kapildeb 3 to 82 India 262 A.S. Moore 58 Kapildeb 55, S.R. Tendulkar 15, W. Akram for 283, W. Yunus 4 to 80 and 303 to 3 S. B-Man J. Record 113 and S. Sidhu 85 Match drawn second test. Faisalabad, 23 to 28 November 1989 India 288 S. B-Man J. Record 76, S.R. Tendulkar 59, Imran Khan 4 to 45 and 398 to 7 M. S. Acharuddin 109, S. B-Man J. Record 83, and S. Sidhu 51, S.R. Tendulkar 8 Pakistan 423 to 9 December. Malik 117, S. Malik 63, Rajas 58, Camp Pradharkars 6 to 132 Match drawn third test. Lahore, 1 to 6 December 1989 India 509 S. B-Man J. Record 218, M. S. Acharuddin 77, R.J. Shastri 61, S.R. Tendulkar 41. The Qatar 3 to 97 Pakistan 699 to 5 S. Mohama 203 Jamie and Dad 145, the Malik 113 Match drawn fourth test. C. Alcote, 9 to 14 December 1989 India 324 S. B-Man J. Record 72, M. S. Acharuddin 52, S.R. Tendulkar 35, W. Akram 5 to 101 and 234 to 7 and S. Sidhu 97. S.R. Tendulkar 57, Imran Khan 3 to 68 Pakistan 250 Raja 56, V. Radan 5 to 79 Match drawn series drawn 0 to 0 for foreign conditions. New Zealand has always been a very difficult tour for an Indian cricketer. It's often windy and chilly, and it, coupled with the short boundaries in most of the grounds, makes it very different from conditions back home in India. In 1990 the challenge was doubly difficult, with Richard Hadley, one of the finest ever exponents of swing bowling, close to his best. As a 17-year-old on his first tour away from the subcontinent, I was excited about the opportunity. India in New Zealand, February-March 1990. The first few days in New Zealand were not easy. The accent of the locals there was very strange to our ears, and the food took some getting used to. The accent problem resulted in an incident involving Manoj Pradharkar very early in the tour. Pradharkar needed an adapter to charge his gadgets, and for some reason decided to put on what he thought was a New Zealand accent while speaking to the housekeeping staff in the hotel. When asking for the adapter on the intercom, he was almost chewing up the first aid, as a result of which the word was sounding like adapter and the staff were having difficulty understanding what he was asking for. Pradharkar got angry after a point and said he needed the adapter immediately. In a few minutes there was a knock on his door, and he opened it to find the doctor standing there. The staff had heard doctor or dapter partly because they pronounced doctor as dactor, and had sent the resident physician to Pradharkar's room. The first game of the tour was in New Plymouth, and the ground was surrounded by hills. It was as if a stadium had been planted in the middle of mountains, and Bishan Singh Bidai, our manager, decided to make the most of the conditions. Bidai, one of the best left-arm spinners of all time, was a really hard taskmaster and liked to make us run huge distances to improve our fitness. At New Plymouth, our fitness drills involved running in the mountains, and by the end of the training sessions we had absolutely no energy left. As in Pakistan, I did not start particularly well, and in the first test at Christchurch, which started on February 2nd, I was dismissed by Danny Morrison for a golden duck. It was a good delivery, but the send-off was interesting, to say the least. I could hear most of the New Zealand players calling me a schoolboy, with plenty of F-words thrown in. They kindly advised me to go back to playing cricket with my school chums, suggesting that I wasn't fit to compete at international level. I kept my mouth shut. The second innings was an improvement in that I managed to stay at the wicket for close to an hour, playing 44 balls. My 24 runs were enough to give me confidence that I was capable of holding my own in strange conditions. Although I had fallen to John Bracewell, trying to cut the ball close to my buddy, I had successfully negotiated Richard Hadley, which I counted as an achievement. Hadley's first deliveries to me were bouncers, but each was profoundly different from the other. The first was an out-seeing bouncer that went away after pitching. The second came in from the same spot, and I had to keep my eye on the ball till the last moment to get my head out of the way. Such was the ability of the man that you had to be at your best at all times to keep him at bay. New Zealand won the first test by 10 wickets, and the second test match at Napier started only a few days later, on February 9th. WE decided to bat first after winning the toss, but the first day was completely washed out by rain. The match finally started on the second day, and I was unbeaten on 80 by the end of the third day's play. The ball was doing a little, and batting wasn't particularly easy, but not once did I try to dominate the bowling the way I had in domestic cricket. When I went in to bat on the fourth morning, the possibility of 100 was on my mind. I was just 20 runs short and was determined to take my opportunity. I started well and hit the very first Danny Morrison delivery for 4. For the rest of the over he bowled short, and I was content to leave everything. In his next over, I again hit a boundary off the first ball. The next was pitched up, and I had already made up my mind to go for a big drive, but the drive was uppish, and I was caught by the New Zealand captain John Wright at mid-off for 88. I was heartbroken. As I walked back to the pavilion, I couldn't control my tears. Why on earth did I play that shot when I was just 12 runs short? By the time I reached the boundary rope, tears were flowing down my cheeks. I'm glad there were too many cameras then, as these days a cameraman would definitely have picked up an embarrassing shot of me in tears. On reaching the dressing room, I went straight to the bathroom and cried for a good few minutes. Missing out on what should have been my first test 100 was just too painful. It was only later that I was told I would have been the youngest test centurion ever. It was a missed opportunity, and I remember telling John Wright, after he took over as coach of India in 2005, that he really shouldn't have taken that catch. WE eventually lost the 3-test match series 0-1 and then played the Rothmans Cup one-day tri-series, with Australia as the third team. As in the first test, I was out for a duck in the first ODI against New Zealand at Huntington on March 1st, caught and bowled by Shane Thompson, who was bowling medium pace. The only difference was that this time I had lasted one more ball. In the end, we lost the game by 108 runs. I made a better fist of it in my next match, on March 6, 1990, an important one in the context of the tournament. WE had lost to Australia in the second game and now needed to beat New Zealand to stay in contention for the final. I made 36 runs off 39 balls, in the process attacking their seam bowlers for the first time and hitting them for quite a few boundaries. WE won the game by 1 run, with Martin Snatton run out and Richard Hadley bowled in the final over by Capelgues, who was declared man of the match for his all-round performance. For the first time my innings had been of use to the team in an official ODI. I couldn't do much celebrating, though, because I damaged my right quadriceps during the game and had to be carried off the field. I couldn't walk at all by the evening and was on crutches for the next few days. It was the first serious injury of my career, and my tournament was over. While we were in New Zealand, Ishabasa, one of the all-time great Indian singers, happened to be performing in Wellington, and the team decided to go to her concert. It was the first time I had seen her live, and I just loved the experience. Ishabasa and La Main Disher, another of India's finest singers, are still two of my favorites, and to see them perform is always very special. On my return to India, my father told me that I had to hone my God-given cricketing ability. He was right. It was time for more hard work to master the skills needed to face the fast-swinging ball, and I was determined to put in the hours in the nets. India in England, July-August 1990. After the New Zealand series, India travelled to England for what was our most important assignment of the year. India had won the Test series in England in 1986, and we were all looking forward to repeating the feat. We had a training camp in Bangalore just before the series. Ambition I continued with his policy of making us run miles every day. We had to jog in a line at Cubbon Park, opposite the Chinnaswamy Stadium, and the last man in the line had to sprint to the front. The same drill was followed for all the players, and the exhausting routine finally resulted in Manoj Prabhakar jokingly suggesting that he was so fast now he would reach the batsman before his delivery did. I had been to England twice before, in 1987-88 and 1988-89, as part of the Star Cricket Club, the team of Kailash Ghattani, the former fast bowler who played first-class cricket for Rajasthan in Indian domestic cricket. In the first instance, I was sponsored by the Kolkata-based Young Cricketers organization, who contributed my airfare. Among other things, I remember the tour for the food we ate. We stayed in school and college dormitories and had breakfast in their dining halls. For the first time in my life I was served cold meat for breakfast. That meat could be eaten cold was a revelation to me. I was also amazed to see so many different types of cars. I have always had an interest in cars, though we didn't own one at the time. Kailash Ghattani had hired a luxury sedan, and I was keen to find out as much as I could about the engineering details of these fascinating machines. Besides playing cricket, these were things that kept me occupied, and I thoroughly enjoyed the opportunity of exploring the foreign country. Visiting Lord's, the mecca of world cricket, was a dream come true, and it all owed to my ambition to play at such venues as a member of the Indian cricket team. In 1990, the tour started with a few first-class fixtures, which were followed by 2 one-day internationals. While I was in good form at the start of the tour and scored runs in the first-class games, I didn't do so well in the first ODI at Leeds on July 18, making only 19. Happily, it didn't matter because the team won, thanks to the batting of Manoj Prabhakar and Prabhakar, and we had a chance of victory in the series if we won the next game at Nottingham on the 20th. In the second match, England produced a better performance, batting first, with Robin Smith, the South African-born middle-order batsman, contributing 103 to their total of 281. We needed to bat really well to close out the series. When I went in to bat at number 6, we needed a further 145 off 20 overs. In those days, that was considered a stiff target. I scored a quick 31 off 26 balls and was dismissed with the score on 249, with 33 still needed to win, but we won the match and the series 2-0, with Anthony seeing us home with an unbeaten 63. It was a perfect start to the tour, giving us some welcome confidence going into the Test series. First Test, Lord's, 26-31 July 1990. The first Test at Lord's will always be remembered for Graham Gooch's heroics with the bat. After being dropped on 33, he went on to make a triple hundred. He was eventually out for 333 and then produced another century in the second innings. For India, the highlights were Atter's 100 and Kapil Dev hitting for successive sixes off Eddie Hemmings, the off-spinner, to save the follow-on. My only significant contribution in the match was a catch off leg spinner Narendra Hiroone's bowling to dismiss England's batting mainstay Alan Lamb in the second innings. It remains the most memorable catch of my career. Hiroone had eaten Lamb in the flight as he stepped out to hit straight down the ground. Despite failing to get to the pitch of the ball, Lamb went through with the shot and the ball went high into the air, looking as if it was going to land some 25 yards behind the bowler. As soon as Lamb hit the shot, I started sprinting from my position at long off. There was very little chance that I would make it, because I had been positioned a few yards wide of the conventional long off position. It was only during the last few steps that I realized I had an outside chance. I had covered a distance of more than 25 yards and was still short. I could dive forward, but I knew I would not have enough control to catch the ball. The other option was to carry on sprinting and try somehow to get the hand to the ball, which was dying on me. I chose the second option and to my surprise felt the ball land in my fully outstretched right hand at knee height. Having completed the catch, I threw the ball up in the air in sheer ecstasy. My teammates were naturally delighted. Hiruin rushed to congratulate me and I felt thrilled at having pulled it off. The crowd appreciated the athletic effort and I vividly remember the warm applause as I walked back to my fielding position. The key to taking catches like these, it seems to me, is not to be afraid of taking the initiative and deciding quickly, while always keeping an eye on the trajectory of the ball. We lost the Lord's Test by the huge margin of 247 runs and needed to tighten our game before the second test at Old Trafford a week later to remain alive in the series. Second test, Old Trafford, 9-14 August 1990. In the first innings at Old Trafford, England once again put together a total of more than 500, with centuries from Gooch and Mike Itherton, and we simply had to get as close to their score as possible in our reply. We were due to bat fourth in the match and any total in excess of 250 would be difficult to chase down on a wearing pitch. Hazard made another 100 and almost everyone in the top order contributed to our first innings effort. Had the lower middle order scored runs, we may have got closer to the English total and even managed a first innings lead. It might also have given me an opportunity to go for my maiden 100, but they got out in quick succession and I ran out of partners. I went into bat at number 6 with the team score on 246 and was last man out for 68, trying to play a big shot off Eddie Hemmings. As Hiruin would I am sure agree, he was not the best number 11 in the world. I felt I had to go for my shots sooner rather than later and I pulled out to Chris Lewis that beat my wicket as a result. Hiruin was always fun to bat with and when he came in he said to me at the wicket that he would be fine as long as the balls were pitched up. He said he had a problem facing bouncers and I assured him that the English bowlers would not bowl bouncers at him because he wasn't a recognized batsman. He managed to bat on for a while and gradually gained in confidence. So much so that he suddenly charged out to Chris Lewis to give the ball a real whack. Chris's expression said it all. He did not take kindly to a number 11 batsman giving him the charge. He was fuming as he walked back to his bowling mark and a bouncer was now inevitable. However, in charging out Hiruin had somehow broken his bat and it took a bit of time to get a replacement from the dressing room. Luckily the few minutes that were lost in the bat change had a calming effect on Chris Lewis and Hiruin survived his innings unscathed. We were finally all out for 432, conceding an 87-run first innings lead. It was evident that England would want to score quickly and set us a target. Gallant Lamb made 100 in the England second innings and on the final day they declared on 320-4, leaving us 92 overs to bat out. The English attack, consisting of Angus Fraser, Chris Lewis, Devon Malcolm and Eddie Hemmings, had some variety, and while the fast bowler used the cloud cover to good effect, Hemmings extracted considerable purchase from the fifth day track. With all the bowlers performing at their best, we were soon reduced to 109-4. Then Adder fell with the score on 127 and Capelgad was yorked by Eddie Hemmings, leaving us at a perilous 183-6. My first test 100 when Manoj Prabhakar joined me in the middle. We badly needed a partnership to save the game. I had been lucky at the start of my innings, with Eddie Hemmings dropping me when I had tried to play an on drive. The ball had hit the outside part of my bat and spooned back to Hemmings, who failed to hold on to it. I learned my lesson and decided not to play any more puppet strokes. At the same time I was determined to play some shots and not go into my shell. Getting ultra-defensive would allow the English bowlers to put more and more fielders round the bat, and by trying to score I would be able to keep the field spread out. Every time I got a chance to score runs, I did so. Most of my scoring strokes were in the nature of punches played with minimum risk. The balance between aggression and caution was crucial and I was trying to focus on each and every ball. My 50 came up but it did not excite me. The match was far from saved and it was the goal. At the other end, Manoj Prabhakar was playing well and after a while it was clear we had succeeded in frustrating the English bowlers. The first task had been accomplished. When trying to save a match, the important thing is to set small targets. These can be as little as batting the next 5 overs, or the next hour, or even a session. If a wicket doesn't fall for close to a session, the opposition, however much they are in control, are bound to feel pressure. Time was gradually running out for England and restlessness was creeping in. When I passed 90 runs, it was obvious that the thought of scoring 100 would start to affect me. After all, it would be my first international century and the crowd had already started expecting it from me. I reminded myself of what had happened in New Zealand and was conscious not to repeat the same mistake. There was still some time left in the day's play and England could press for victory if I got out. In the mid-90s I got a lucky reprieve against Angus Fraser. He bowled me a bouncer and I ducked under it with my bat held above my head like a periscope. The ball hit the back of the bat and went along the ground to find leg. It could have gone straight into the hands of any of the close infielders or to the wicket-keeper. But it didn't. I was glad and thanked God for the reprieve. That Old Trafford luck seemed to be with me. I batted patiently until I finally played a punch off Angus Fraser through mid-off went on 98. Chris Lewis chased down the ball but by the time he threw it back to the bowler I had run 3, completing my first Test 100. The crowd stood to applaud but I was extremely uncomfortable about acknowledging them. I had never been in that position before and was acutely embarrassed about raising my bat to the stadium. Every time I looked back at the footage of my first century, I realized that celebrating was not something that came naturally to me. It was only with time that I became more confident of my presence in the middle. Presence is actually very important in international sport. It is one thing just being there in the middle, but it is another making people aware of your presence. It is about body language and radiating confidence, something that the WBF, the Indian batting legend Vic Richards, would personify. With me it happened after I had scored a few hundreds and felt more established in international cricket. As I grew more assured of my presence, I came up with my own signature style of celebrating an achievement by showing the bat to the dressing room. Most cricketers develop their own style of celebrating. For example, the way Glenn McGrath and Shane Warne showed the ball to the crowd after picking up 5 wickets in an innings was something they evolved over the course of their careers. At Old Trafford I continued to bat on ever reaching my 100 and with every passing over it was becoming apparent that the match would end in a draw. When the match was finally called off with 2 of the 20 mandatory overs still to be bowled, we had reached 343 for no further losses. Prakar and I had put together an unbeaten 160-run stand. I remember walking back to the pavilion to a standing ovation. Both umpires, John Hampshire and John Holder, congratulated me on my 100 and all the England players walked up to me to offer some kind words. In the dressing room my teammates congratulated me, not just on my maiden Test 100 but also for batting through the day and saving the game for the team, meaning that it was all to play for in the third Test. It was the second occasion I had done so. This one was more satisfying, though, because this time I played a central part in the effort, unlike in the fourth Test in Pakistan, where I had a supporting role. Just when I was about to relax after a good day's work, I was informed that I had to face the media. It was going to be the first time I addressed a press conference. I asked our manager Majak Mantri, the former Test cricketer who toured England with India in the 1950s, if it was compulsory or if I could just skip it. He assured me it was a routine matter and said that the journalists would only ask me questions about my performance and about the match. My teammates, however, started pulling my leg, saying they'd ask me questions I couldn't answer and that it was going to be a really difficult session. Looking back, I must admit that I quite enjoyed the experience. I was uncomfortable to start with, but it was quite straightforward really. I just needed to share my thoughts and it wasn't such a daunting task after all. Most of the questions were pleasant and it felt good to receive compliments from well-known cricket writers. I was declared player of the match, my first such award, and once again felt awkward at the ceremony. I was handed the bottle of champagne but, not being 18, I didn't drink at the time. I just wanted the presentation to be over and to hurry back to the dressing room with the award as soon as possible. In the end I brought the bottle home with me to Mumbai and finally opened it on the occasion of my daughter Sarah's first birthday in 1998. On returning to the hotel after the match I got a call from home and remember speaking to what must have been 30 or 40 people on the phone. It was a spontaneous gathering of all my friends at our neighbor's apartment to celebrate the 100 and it was really touching to know that people in the colony were so thrilled at the accomplishment. Some of them jokingly mentioned to me that as I wasn't old enough to drink, They were enjoying a drink on my behalf. My parents were extremely happy with my performance, and my brother too felt vindicated. The third test match, at the Oval at the end of August, was another draw, which meant that we lost the series 0-1, but I was still reasonably satisfied with my performances in England and felt I had taken a few important strides. I returned to India the better test cricketer and far more confident of myself as a performer, ready for the next big challenges, the Tour of Australia at the end of the following year, followed by the World Cup jointly organised by Australia and New Zealand. India in Australia, November-February 1991. 1992 WE began the tour with a couple of one-day practice matches in Perth in November 1991, the first at Lilac Hill and the second at the WACA, one of the fastest cricket wickets in the world. At the WACA we were bowled out for just 64, and it was clear we had to adjust to Australian conditions as soon as possible if we were going to be competitive in the series. Our first three-day tour game was against a full-strength New South Wales team at Liverpool between 23 and November 25, and it was in that game that I got my first taste of real Australian competitiveness. It was a fast, lively wicket, and Jeff Lawson, the NSW captain, had no hesitation in putting us in after winning the toss. In addition to Lawson, their bowling attack included Mike Whitney, Steve and Mark W. Locke, Greg Matthews and W. and Holdsworth, and it was a tough test for us. The team also included Mark Taylor and 5 players: Whitney, Lawson, Steve W. Locke, Mark Taylor and Matthews had already played test cricket for Australia. I was looking to be aggressive from the very beginning and played the number of horizontal bat shots over point and gully. It was in this match that I had my first exchange with Steve W. Locke, who didn't seem keen on the idea of an 18-year-old attacking the bowling like that. A lot of things were said to me, and they were the first of many over the years. It was in the course of this match that the Australian Test team for the first test at Brisbane was announced. Steve W. Locke was not included in the side, so I said to him that if he wanted to fight with me, he first needed to get into the Australian team. It was all done in good spirit, and throughout our careers we had great mutual respect. In fact, the banter, it must be said, was a result of this. We knew how important it was to get Steve W. Locke out early and tried all we could to unsettle him. There were occasions when we even resorted to observing total silence when W. Locke batted, as we came to believe that saying things to him actually strengthened his resolve to do better. A tough start in the first test at Brisbane. Starting on November 29, 1991, the Australians beat us convincingly, thanks in large part to superb bowling from Craig McDermott and Mert Hughes. Like most of our team, I didn't do much with the bat, and we knew we had to bounce back in Melbourne in the Boxing Day test. At the microgram we remained competitive till the middle of the third day, with Kieran Moore coming to the rescue with 67 in our first innings and Kapilgan and Pradakar both bowling well, before the batting collapse in our second innings dampened our hopes. I managed to stay in for a reasonable time and scored 40 off 107 balls, but I was disgusted with myself for trying to hit a big shot and getting out-caught by talent border against the off-spinner Peter Taylor after doing all the hard work and playing myself in. I was so fed up that I didn't eat lunch in the dressing room and was on edge for the whole day. Something else happened in Melbourne that has never happened again in my life, I'm pleased to say. When I went back to the dressing room I realized that my abdominal protector had been broken into 3 pieces when I was hit by a Bruce Reid delivery. Reid, the tall left-arm fast bowler, got a lot of wickets in the series, and I was lucky that no major damage was caused by the accident. Fighting back down 0-2, we went to Sydney for the next test on January 2, 1990, knowing it was our last chance to get back in the series. It was a typical SCB wicket, helpful to the batsmen to start with, and I thought our bowlers did very well to bowl Australia out for 313 in the first innings. It was essential for us to take a substantial lead and give our bowlers a chance to bowl Australia out again in the second innings. I didn't sleep much the night before batting. I was sharing the room with Sourav Ganguly, who later captained India and is a very good friend. I remember the startled Sourav waking up in the middle of the night and seeing me shadow practice. Sourav wasn't playing in that game and was surprised to see me up so late. I told him I was planning how to play McDermott and the other bowlers. Unsurprisingly, the next day I was feeling rather tired. India were batting and I was batting at number 6, So I decided to take a nap on the dining table inside the SCG dressing room, asking Europe to wake me up at the fall of the next wicket. He did so when Hazard got out. By then I was feeling refreshed and was ready to go out and bat. For the first time in the series our top order had fired, and by the time I went in, the score was a healthy 201-4, with the Tendulkar having contributed a half-century. We needed another good partnership to push on for the lead, and, with the opener Ravi Shastri playing extremely well at the other end, that's what we managed to do. The second innings at Melbourne had definitely helped me, and I was now able to middle the ball from the very start. There was a phase halfway through when I began to lose concentration and feel edgy, but I forced myself to exercise restraint and it soon passed. After reaching my half-century, I began to play a lot more shots and was soon close to my second Test 100. I vividly remember the glance to fine leg that brought up my century. I ran to, and the second run was the fastest I have ever run. Robbie went on to score an excellent double hundred, the first by an Indian in Australia, as we put on 196 runs for the fifth wicket. Sydney continues to be my favourite ground outside India, and to score my first 100 in Australia at the SCG was special. I had grown up watching cricket in Australia on the TV and used to wake up early to watch the Victoria Cup in 1985. Now I watch playing at the actual venues and scoring runs. The SCG Test is also remembered for the debut of a plump Australian leg spinner with a mop of blonde hair. Though Shane Warne took only one wicket in the match, it was evident to us all that he could give the ball a fair rip. While no one could have predicted the 708 Test wickets he would take in his career, the fact that he had talent was obvious from the very first day he took to the field in January 1992. Knowing that we could bat only once, because of valuable time lost to rain and bad light on the third and fourth days, we batted for close to an hour on the final day and declared with a lead of 170 runs.